Hi, everyone. Chapter 12, Book 1 of Epictetus' Discourses its title is On Contentment. And, I've given a lot of thought to this discourse over the last week or so since I first read it. Because, as an American, as a United Statesite, the culture here is so focused, I think, on discontent as a cultural good, meaning, progress, and some people always have to be in flux and trying to improve things or trying to improve themselves in some way, or better their circumstances. And so I think that that contentment is sort of sometimes looked on as complacency, and the two are not exactly, they're not actually the same thing at all. They're two different states of being. So Epictetus starts this discourse. Really, he mentions three different things that a person who's educating themselves should focus on, and one of them, the first one, is how can I follow the gods in all things, and the second one is then how can I be content with that divine governance, and then the third one is then how can I be free. So the first one, how can a person follow the gods in all things? I think Epictetus in this statement, this is a recurring sort of theme in his in the discourses, is sort of the will of the gods. And to me, what this means is a person. How can I follow the gods in all things? Means a person. It means when understanding things that are in your control and things that are not in your control. So that's easier said than done many times in our lives when we're faced with different circumstances and changing circumstances. But understanding and coming to terms with that, and leading your life by what's in your control and what's out of your control, actually is a primary component of then learning contentment. Which contentment then is how his second question in those three things was then how can I be content with this divine governance? So that's how then once I understand the universe outside myself that I have no control over, and that's going to continue operating in the way that it will, regardless of what I do. And this is not just the universe, meaning cosmology, meaning solar systems and galaxies. This is also talking about societies, family dynamics, lots of other people, lots of other things come into play, because we have to live our life in this sort of the structure that exists during our time of living, and there's only certain things about that we can actually change. Some of it we cannot actually change ourselves. And then the third point he makes is then how can I be free? And so he goes through this discourse, and I think his lesson is that we become free by freeing ourselves of things that are not in our control, by freeing ourselves of worry and effort in ways that we have no control over. So he then goes on to mention about what is a free person, and he gives this definition. He is free for whom all things happen according to his will, and whom no one can hinder. That's true, but it sounds a little bit like a sociopath, doesn't it? Because it's a person who just doing whatever he wants to would basically be ignoring others around him. And actually, this is mentioned by, then a follow-up in this discourse is, if that's so, and Epictetus, wouldn't that be, sociopathic? And Epictetus says, yes, in that case, taking it that way is actually one of the worst, one of the most shameful ways that a person can live, because that person is not following, the will of not following the gods in all things. In other words, not that first premise that we talked about earlier, meaning he's going against, maybe he's violating someone else's, he's just plowing through whatever he wants. If he wants food, he just goes and takes it. If he wants sex, maybe he just goes and, takes it from someone. So that person is not free. That person's actually, a prisoner to his desire and to his will. He's not free from his will, if that makes sense. So, so then the discussion goes, about this mindfulness of contentment, about becoming content with the universe or the circumstances that we find ourselves in is actually, one of the main, I think, tenets of Stoicism, and one of the things that really requires a lot of practice at first. And I think that a lot of people might not think of contentment as something that can be learned. It is something, I think, that a lot of people, and maybe myself included in the past, felt like, now I'm content. Contentment is this emotion that comes to you from outside, when actually it's cultivated from the inside. So in the Discourse, Epictetus talks about other people. Like, can we avoid other people? Because sometimes other people are maybe the source of, we think, are the source of a discontentment for us. And Epictetus, reminds us here that we cannot control other people, that we can't change other people into who we want them to be, that they exist on their own terms, and that is an external factor that we cannot readily change. And so a discontented person might say, withdraw from people and then feel isolated and lonely. But then when they're in a crowd, they may think it's noisy and, annoying. And so the contented person could find a way to be content in both of these situations, when he's not with people and then when he's also in a crowd of people, because a contented person would look for, person who has practiced contentment would look for, his own inner tranquility in both of those circumstances, and so would not have his inner tranquility necessarily disturbed in either of those sorts of environments. So then, in the Discourse, another person brings up, well, what if I have a maimed leg, of a disability? So, circumstances like this is one of those things that's outside of a person's control. Sort of the physical body that they have, some of it is within our control. We could, if we want to be a blonde nowadays, we can certainly dye our hair blonde, those of us who have hair. And there's certain other things we could do. If we have maybe a club foot or something, we can have that corrected by surgery, and all that would be fine, because those would be things that are in our control now. But those that are not in our control, meaning maybe our intelligence level, or the color of our eyes, or I don't know, any sort of thing that a person might be dissatisfied with or unhappy with, that's about themselves, that they can't necessarily change, at least given today's technology. Maybe our height or something, that's really, outside of something that we can control. And so it's not the whole universe, it's not, it would not be practicing self-excellence, and it wouldn't disturb your inner tranquility then to be angry at the universe because it didn't make you who you wanted to be, with the attributes that you wanted to have. And so, it would behoove that everyone to learn to, sort of accept your body that you have, or be content with who you are now. And another point that was made up that was brought up in the Discourse is actually, well, what about if I had bad parents? Because everybody has different parents, and some parents aren't better than others, and some parents may start their children out and expose their children to lots of things that help them later in life, while other parents either don't have access to that, or they don't have the knowledge of that, or they just don't do it because they don't feel like doing it. But in any case, your parents are something that you have no control over, nor do you have a lot of control over your childhood, meaning, the tools that you were given as a child, because all of these things came from outside of you, because you weren't a functioning autonomous person yet. And so maybe you could be angry at your parents for not putting you through a private school and getting you started on an academic career or some other sort of career, an artistic career that you wanted, that you now want as an adult. But that's again, it's wasted energy, because it's something that you had no control over, and it's not who you are. So you don't have that. You didn't have that as a child. You didn't have the types of parents that you might think that you should, and so it's pointless to sort of be angry that you didn't, because it's going to disturb your sense of well-being. So I think that this is a really good reminder again about contentment, and contentment actually, as I mentioned earlier, it comes from within, and it is something that can be learned. And so I think that I think Epictetus is reminding us of a good lesson here, that when faced with first, we need to learn to be content with our life as it is. So until you become content with life as it is, there's not a really your life as it is right now, no matter what your station in life, a Stoic would say, then you haven't really learned how to be content. And until you learn how to be content, you probably never will, no matter what station in life you achieve, or what goals of yours that you achieve. It's if you're not content where you are now, there's a really good chance that you won't be content whenever you do X, Y, and Z, because something else will replace that. So that's not the same thing as complacency, though, which is accepting things that you can change, that would change your life for the better, and accepting those and yet not doing that change. That's complacency. That's different than contentment. So I hope I made that point. I think I'll stop with that. I really love this discourse. I love the idea of contentment. It's one of the I think the brightest and best messages that Stoicism has to offer the modern world, because I think if people could learn this lesson, I know it has helped me tremendously, and I really feel like that it could help others, that if others could learn this art of contentment, learn how to cultivate contentment in their lives as it is now. That's not to mean you can't want to change. It just means cultivating contentment as your life is now, in your life as it is now. I just think I think everybody, that those people, the lives of people would really improve, and the world as a whole would improve. So I hope I made some sense with that. So the next chapter is chapter 13, is called How One May Act in All Things So as to Please the Gods. So it's a little bit related to that first point that was at the beginning of this discourse. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next time. Okay, stay tuned. Bye.